Sefer Vayikra, Parasha Vayikra, Vayikra verse, Parasha of Sefer Vayikra. Let's find a tree to sit next to real quick. So, some terms to know first of all. HaKadosh Baruch Hu means the Holy One, blessed be He. Moshe Rabbeinu is a way to call Moses with the respect that's due to him. Parasha means portion, and Korban means sacrifice or offerings. This week's Parasha is called Parasha Vayikra. Yes, it has the same name as the book it's in, which is Sefer Vayikra, which means and he called. It's when HaKadosh Baruch Hu called Moshe Rabbeinu to teach him about Korban. It starts the third book of the 5 books of Moses called Leviticus. In the last few Parasha from the previous book, we learned about building the tabernacle, where the altar was, and where Korbanot was made. So it makes sense that now the Torah talks all about the sacrifices. But there's something to think about. Torah is like a big lesson book. Even though we don't have the temple now, we can't make sacrifices. This part still teaches us things. Like in the beginning of the Parasha, Leviticus 1-2, it says, when one will bring a sacrifice of you, which doesn't sound right? It should be when one of you will bring a sacrifice. But the Torah says it that way to teach us something important. The word for sacrifice in Hebrew is korban, which means to draw close. So if I want to get closer to God by making an offering, it has to be from me. I can't rely on anyone else. There's no quick fix to get closer to God. I have to put in the effort myself. So the majority of Sefer Vayikra deals with the difficult subjects of sacrificial offerings and tumah, which is ritual impurity. Laws that have practical application only when the temple is standing. Again, we have a tradition that the first part of the Torah that school children are taught is Sefer Vayikra. The sages remark, let the pure ones come and study matters of purity, meaning it is appropriate for the pure, innocent school children to begin their study of Torah with the topics of Vayikra, which involve the purity of the Beit HaMikdash and the offerings. Logically, we would have likely advised that Sefer Vayikra be the last of the 5 books of the Torah that school children should study. How can a young child appreciate the ritual slaughtering of animals and as offerings, the collection of the lifeblood in sacred vessels and the sprinkling on the altar? At first glance, it would seem that a school child's introduction to Torah should begin with Sefer Bereshit, or Genesis, which tells the inspiring stories of patriarchs rather than the technical and esoteric laws of Sefer Vayikra. One rabbi explained this tradition by way of an analogy to a man who was ignorant about automobiles and purchased his first car. He drove the car happily for several days until one day it stopped moving. Frustrated, he called the manufacturer and claimed that the car was defective. The manufacturer told him, check the gasoline gauge, and it indicated that the car had run out of fuel. And so the manufacturer told the man to go to the gas station, purchase gasoline, fill the tank, and the car would once again work. The man followed the advice and saw gasoline for the first time. He angrily called back the manufacturer and said, this putrid substance will make my car work? I don't want to put this stuff in my brand new car. The manufacturer patiently explained, look, I'm the manufacturer. I made this car, and I know how it works far better than you. Loathsome as gasoline is, and trust me, it's loathsome, you can trust me, the one who made the car, and that it will enable the car to run. The same is true regarding the human spirit. The Almighty created us. He made the human soul, and He knows far better than anyone else what is most beneficial in nurturing the soul. If our religious traditions teaches us that children benefit the most from initially learning Sefer Vayikra, then difficult as it may be for us to understand how this could be, we must accept and follow the instructions of the manufacturer. He created the soul, and therefore He knows best how to properly nurture it. This same message can be extended to all mitzvot. We often do not understand the spiritual value of a given halakha, and at times a law or obligation might strike us as odd. It is important to remember to trust God, the manufacturer, who created the human being and knows far better than we will ever know how to best care for our souls. Why are the halakha, or laws, important to know as a beginner, aside from it being the way it is taught? Rabbi Mizrahi, about a decade ago, had a lecture about Parasha Vayikra, and I would like to, well, I can't really quote it. I don't remember, but if you guys look it up, it starts a little before 4 minutes into the video, for about 2 minutes long. He explains pretty much why it's important to know the laws. Anyway, now I understand that these days it might be hard to study and focus on Torah given all the events going on. There's a lot of propaganda out there. Some might make you question things. For instance, about what really happened that made the Jews from Baghdad, Iran, Afghanistan, etc. move to Israel. Some say it was really Israel or the Mossad who attacked the Jews and made them move to Israel intentionally. It's obvious that a country's leaders use their citizens as collateral. It's pretty much like what politicians do, right? Anyway, what's critical and important always is that we know the difference between Judaism and government. They are not the same thing. Some people may fear us for reasons they just don't understand. You know, maybe studying Judaism as a child can make us think different, live life different. HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes us smarter over time as we study Torah and study laws. Anyway, Parasha Vayikra primarily deals with laws related to sacrifices, offerings, and the duties of the priests, the Kohanim. And here are some of the 613 mitzvot mentioned in Parashat Vayikra. The commandment to bring various types of offerings, such as burnt offerings, grain offerings, peace offerings, sin offerings, and guilt offerings. The prohibition against consuming blood. The commandment to eat the flesh of certain offerings in a designated time and place. The requirement for priests to eat certain portions of the offerings in a state of ritual purity. The laws of impurity, tumah, and purity in relation to the tabernacle, the Mishkan, and offerings. The commandment to offer sacrifices for unintentional sins. The prohibition against offering sacrifices with defects or blemishes. The commandment to observe the laws of offerings and sacrifices with proper intention and reverences. These are some of the commandments mentioned in Parashat Vayikra, primarily focusing on laws related to the sacrificial system and the role of the priests in facilitating offerings and maintaining ritual purity. One of the first things I learned when I lived a very different life is that many times they have two different words that mean the same thing, but one sounds bad. This is an example I first learned. Extortion works exactly the same as tax. There's no difference besides how many syllables the word has and the organization that uses one or the other. Anyway, enjoy reading Parashat Vayikra. Thanks for watching this video. See you on the next Parasha. Vayikra.